At this point, we know that slots are great for providing data and determining what shows up inside of the child. If you think of this like the classic crane game, where you grab items and put them in the slot, that's basically what we're doing with slots, is we're taking data from our parent and dropping it inside of the child slot. However, the issue becomes what happens when the child needs to provide data instead of the parent. Unfortunately, at this time, we don't have the techniques needed in order to access the child's data inside of the slot template. Translating this to code, we have a library.vue component here that takes the book title from its data store and populates the vslot title inside of our book component. However, in the event we want to populate our book title using the data coming from our book.vue component, you might think it would work something like this instead, where you can refer directly to the data store. Unfortunately, this won't work yet. This is why we need scope slots. So what are scope slots? At its core, scope slots allow a component to expose its data to the slot's template block. Using our crane arm example from earlier, what scope slots allows us to do is remove that barrier so that now we can go in and choose data that has been exposed and go ahead and render them inside of the slot template. One thing to note though is that the data that we expose through our scope slots is scoped just to the template slot and cannot be used for other things inside of the parent. We'll get more into this in the next lesson, but I wanted to mention it in this lesson. So as far as how to use scope slots, let's start with a standard name slot of header. What we do is we define attributes on our slot just as we would define props in other components. In this case, we're binding the logo to logo image. Next, inside of our template, where we're assigning the vslot header, we go ahead and open up value slot props. This is an object that contains all of the props that have been defined on this particular slot. In this case, our logo. Next, all we need to do is access it by typing slotprops.logo, and this will go ahead and call our logo attribute inside of the slot. Using our library and book example from earlier, let's implement this. First, we'll go ahead and add an attribute of book title to our slot. This will allow us to provide the book title from our data store in book.vue. Next, we'll open up our slot props by assigning it to our vslot title. And then we'll prepend our book title with slot props. And with that, you now know what scope slots are and how to use them inside of your Vue components. In the next lesson, we'll be going over some caveats to scope slots along with some best practices. See you there.